I don't believe love is a fireworks show. I never have. Fireworks are loud and dangerous and gone before you can even say you like them. I believe in quieter things. Grocery lists. Oil changes on time. Folding a t-shirt the way the other person likes without announcing that you did. I'm not the kind of man who needs to be thanked for taking out the trash. That's the point. The work matters because it's done, not because anyone claps. When I met Lauren, she said that was what she liked most about me. Not the way I looked, regular. Not my job, steady. Not even my jokes, dry to the point of concern. She liked that I was reliable. If I said I'd be there at 6, I was there at 5:50, sitting in the car, finishing the song, so I could walk in on time without being the guy who arrives early and forces the host to perform. She said it made her feel safe. We were both children of loud houses. We wanted to build a quiet one. At first, we did. We had a rhythm I could set clocks by. Monday pasta, Tuesday takeout, Wednesday laundry, Thursday leftovers. Friday we pretended to be spontaneous and ended up at the same 3 places. Saturdays we slept in like teenagers and made pancakes at noon. Sundays we set the week up. Coffee, the habitual review of our calendars, the reminder that we liked each other and weren't just project managing a life. Somewhere it shifted. I don't know which brick in the wall moved first. I just know the wall moved. It started with sleep. Lauren used to fall asleep mid-sentence, hand on my chest, a breath that steadied as if she'd been waiting all day to be done holding herself up. Then came the weeks where she couldn't. She'd toss, sigh, sit up, check the clock, turn her pillow, turn it again, get up for water she wouldn't drink, stare out the window like the night owed her an explanation. Her job had gotten worse. New boss who thought volume was leadership, new quotas, new meetings stacked on meetings. I told myself it made sense. The mind works differently when it's lived on all day. I bought blackout curtains. Thick, heavy, the kind that turned noon into a rumor. They made the room look like a hotel, but in the wrong way, like we were hiding from something we'd invited in. I installed a white noise machine, then upgraded to one with brown noise, because the internet said the lower frequencies help more. I got her a weighted blanket, the good kind with glass beads, not the cheap sandbag that clumps and turns into a dog sleeping on your knees. I learned about magnesium glycinate. I learned about sleep latency. I learned to brew chamomile at 9 and not talk after 10. Lauren tried. She wanted it to work. She downloaded a sleep tracking app that drew little graphs of how she'd done, as if you could chart rest like revenue. She kept a notebook on the nightstand and wrote down the thoughts she didn't want to take to bed. Work tasks, grocery items, one-line questions with no answer. The pages filled and the sleep didn't. She cried once, quiet and so angry at her own tears that she apologized for them. I held her and said we'd figure it out. It felt like the kind of problem a man like me should be able to solve with a receipt and the right kind of bulb. It wasn't. After a month of trying everything the internet sells, Lauren said we should see a sleep specialist. The clinic looked like a waiting room for new furniture. Pale wood, plants that weren't pretending to be real, soothing music that sounded like it was made by a machine about a river. We filled out forms. We told the truth like good patients. The doctor, Dr. Hale, young and relentlessly gentle, asked about caffeine, screens, temperature, stress. He nodded a lot. He said nothing stupid, which is rare in a man who's paid to nod. He asked if we'd consider separate bedrooms temporarily, just to reset sleep associations. Lauren turned to me, eyebrows up. What do you think? I thought that I had married a woman who wanted to fix things with me, not around me. I thought that if rest could come back to our house in any way, I'd carry it in myself. I said, if it helps, I'm in. Dr. Hale smiled like we'd given the right answer on a test. He called it a trial. For weeks, then reevaluate. No phones in the bedroom, no TV, low light, same bedtime and wake time, no alcohol after 8, no heavy meals late. He said to make the room a temple for sleep, not a multi-purpose hall for life. He said intimacy was important, but so was restoring the body's ability to link pillow with peace. You can still cuddle in the morning, he said, like someone who's read that in a book. We went home and made the guest room mine. I moved my nightstand, my lamp, my drawer of old t-shirts with paint stains that tell better stories than most vacations. The guest bed was fine, not great. I ordered a better mattress and a decent pillow that didn't feel like a bag of old scarves. I put a plant on the dresser that didn't complain when you forgot it. Snake plant, heroic little idiot. I didn't mope. If you say you're in, you're in. The first few nights, we were almost sweet about it. We brushed our teeth side by side, kissed at the doorway like teenagers at a dance with a chaperone watching, and went to our corners. At 6 in the morning, I'd bring her coffee. If she was asleep, I'd set it on the coaster quietly and stand there for a second to be grateful for the silence. If she was awake, she'd smile and pat the bed and say, "It's working," even if her eyes said maybe not yet. The house changed shape. Our bedroom, the one that held the bed we dragged across 2 apartments, became her room and the guest room mine. We stopped saying master and guest. We said sleep room and rest room like we were inventing new kinds of places. We were careful with the language because words grow roots if you water them enough. I adjusted. That's something I do well. I sleep like a soldier. When it's time, I sleep. When it's not, I don't. I kept Dr. Hale's rules without making the rules the point. Lights low. No phone in bed. No news after 9. I stopped bringing my laptop to the couch. The evenings got quieter. The quiet was supposed to be medicine. Sometimes it tasted like absence. We had check-ins on Sundays to see how it was going. Lauren would sit with her notebook and her app, show me the graphs, the nights in blue, the little trophy icon when she hit her target. The numbers made her feel safe. I nodded because feeling safe is the kind of result you don't argue with, even if the method makes the kitchen feel like a meeting room. She still had bad nights. Work bled into everything. She started staying later to get ahead of emails, which is a thing people say when they know the river will flood again tomorrow. I cooked earlier and put her plate in the oven to stay warm. Sometimes she'd text and say not to wait. Sometimes she wouldn't. I tried not to fill in the blanks with monsters. Not every blank is a mouth. Around week 3, Lauren announced she was going to add a few things to her routine: a lavender spray, a blue light blocking lamp, a breathwork class that met on Wednesdays and promised to release stuck energy. I said sure and circled Wednesdays for myself. I'd go to the gym late. Let her have the place after. She thanked me without looking up from her phone. I noticed little changes. A second water glass on her nightstand some mornings. Lipstick on the rim that wasn't the color she wore to work. Lauren always wore pale coral. This was more red, deeper. I teased her once, trying a new shade, and she said she'd grabbed the wrong one from the bottom of her bag. Reasonable. Totally reasonable. Explanations live everywhere when you want them to. One Thursday, she asked if we could extend the separate rooms for another month. Just to lock it in, she said. I'm finally feeling better. She looked better. The shadows under her eyes had lifted. She stopped snapping at small things. She laughed more, in bursts, often at her phone. I said okay. I recommended we mark an end date and celebrate it. Pancakes, late morning, our old song. But she was non-committal in the way people are when they don't want to schedule what they don't plan to attend. I bought her a sleep ring, one of those stainless steel bands that tracks your heart rate and temperature and tells you how ready you are to be a person. It came in a little black box that made it seem serious. She slid it on and did a small satisfied hum, like the ring had told her a secret. She began to quote it the way people quote scripture. Ring says my rem was strong. Ring says I should go to bed early. The ring became a third voice in our marriage, polite and always right. I joked about asking it for dinner preferences. She didn't laugh. I'm not painting Lauren as a villain. She was doing her best to feel human. People cling to what works, even if it replaces other things that used to. I held on to what I could without holding her by the wrist. The problem wasn't separate rooms. It was separate lives sneaking in behind them in socks. Her breathwork class had a rotating location. Church basement. Yoga studio. Someone's living room with tapestries. She'd come home smelling like mint and incense. I'd kiss her and taste something not ours. It wasn't a person. It was a place. That's different, and it's not. On a Sunday morning near the end of month 2, I made pancakes. She took one bite and set the fork down. Too heavy, she said. I don't eat like that anymore. We used to eat like that together. I told myself it was grief talking, not accusation. Food is sacrament in some houses. Ours had started saying, take this, but maybe not with me. By month 3, strangers were living in our vocabulary. Sleep debt. Wind down window. Restorative practices. The words made sense, and they made us sound like a brochure. We were 2 people with a good house, and a problem we were treating with correct nouns. I could have called it then. I didn't. I'm not made for dramatic exits or public grief. I didn't want to be another man who leaves because he feels slighted. I wanted to be the man who kept showing up with the right kind of lamp until the night learned manners again. One Friday, there was a storm on the forecast from afternoon through midnight. I love storms. They make the world honest. Everything is the sky and the thing under it. The air felt metallic and eager. I'd made chili early so we could eat before the power became a suggestion. Lauren texted, "Late. Don't wait. Work fire." I set aside a bowl and covered it. At 8:30 she came in, hair damp, eyes bright like she'd been laughing in weather that made other people ruin umbrellas. She padded into her room with a "be right back" that didn't mind if I was. I heard the white noise machine turn up. It sounded more like rain than the rain did. At 9:15, the power went out. The apartment sighed and went still. The noise machine went silent. The refrigerator quieted in that abrupt way that makes you think you've lost a heartbeat. The storm took what it wanted and left us with ourselves. I found the flashlights in the drawer where I keep things that do not expire: batteries, rubber bands, extra screws. I lit 2 candles. The house looked like it remembered us. I was halfway down the hall to the breaker when I heard a voice that wasn't mine. A man's voice. Low, careful. Close enough to hear without making out words. The kind of careful you use when you're not supposed to be heard. My body did a thing I didn't know it still could. It cooled from the chest out, like a wave receding. I stood there, one flashlight pointed at the floor, because shining a light would be both literal and ridiculous. The voice spoke again, a soft laugh. Lauren whispered, "Shoo." Not angry, playful, urgent. The kind of shoo that knows how a sound feels in the dark. I didn't count to 10. I didn't press my ear to the door. I didn't perform anything I'd be ashamed to see myself doing. I turned, went to the breaker closet, and reset what I could. It gave me the dignity of pretending to cooperate. The light stayed out. The storm kept being itself. I walked back toward my room and saw, in the dim beam of the flashlight, a pair of shoes by Lauren's door I'd never seen before. Men's. Newer than mine. No mud. Not work boots. Not running shoes. City shoes, not yet scuffed by this city. My beam didn't linger. It ticked across leather and left it in the dark where it belonged. In my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and set the flashlight on the nightstand. My hands were steady in the way they are when something has already decided itself and is letting you catch up. The storm growled and gave me a fact to respect. Sometimes the world tells you the truth by cutting the noise so you can hear it. I didn't make a scene. I don't have scenes in me. What I have are steps. I pulled my duffel from the closet. I packed like I was getting ready for a flight I wanted to catch, not one I feared missing. Clothes for a week, documents, the small things that make temporary spaces feel chosen. My lamp, the book by the bed, the watch my father wore when he needed to remember that time is real and not a feeling. I took my toolbox, not because I planned to fix anything, but because I have learned that being able to hang a shelf in a place you might be for a while can make a man feel like he's not waiting. I wrote a note, not because she deserved one, not because I needed the last word, but because I didn't want to be a ghost in my own house. Lauren, I followed every rule we made. I believed you when you said sleep would save us, and for a while I thought maybe it would. The storm cut the power tonight. It also cut the last story I was using to explain other sounds. I'm not here to argue with whoever is in your room. I won't ask how long, or why, or what. I don't want the list you'll make to try to make it look smaller. I'm leaving because I don't live where I'm not wanted, and I don't compete in my own home. The rent is paid through the end of the month. The spare key is on the hook. I'll send for the rest. We can talk like people who once promised to be kind, or we can let lawyers speak. I prefer kind. Water the snake plant on Wednesdays. It doesn't ask for much, and it still earns what it gets. I left it on the kitchen counter next to the flashlight, in case the power came back and made everything pretend to be normal. I put my keys on the hook like I always do. I took one last look without cataloging. I don't take inventory when I leave. I give back the space and keep myself. I carried my bag down the hall. The other voice murmured again, softer this time, the selected soundtrack of a world I wasn't responsible for anymore. I walked past without touching the door, the way you walk past a mirror when you don't need to know what you look like to know who you are. The stairwell smelled like wet concrete and other people's dinners, as if the building was full of lives that had never learned my name and would keep going just fine. The storm had eased to a stubborn drizzle. The streetlights blinked like tired eyes. I loaded my bag into the trunk and sat in the driver's seat long enough to feel the wheel under my hands. It felt like permission. I didn't have a destination ready. That's not how I operate. I called Eric, the friend you call when you need a place that has clean sheets and doesn't ask for stories. He picked up on the second ring. Garage apartment's empty, he said before I asked. Come over. I'll leave the door unlocked. Coffee's there. We can talk in the morning or not at all. On the highway, the city behind me pretended it had always been a painting. Wipers kept time. My phone vibrated. It would have been Lauren, or a calendar notification, or the always-on algorithm reminding me I'd left a noise machine in a cart somewhere. I didn't look. You can let a thing ring, and it will eventually admit it doesn't control you. Eric's place smelled like cedar and detergent. The garage apartment had a chair that looked like it had been sat in by better men than me who had also needed a quiet room and a night to hold still. I put down my lamp and the book, and they made a corner look like a decision. I slept without graphs or rings or rules. Morning came like it always does for the undeserving and the deserving alike. I made coffee in a pot that sputtered like it didn't trust me yet. I sat on the small front steps and watched the street wake up. People with dogs who walked like their owners had places to be, a kid learning to ride a scooter without using his feet. The world didn't mourn with me. It just did what it does. There was mercy in that. My phone was full when I finally looked. Texts with my name, then my full name, then silence as punctuation. 2 missed calls from a number I didn't know and could guess. 1 voicemail from Lauren that started brave and collapsed into the truth. Please call me. Please. I didn't. Not to be cruel. Because I wanted to be kind to the version of me who always picked up when someone he loved was the one who hung up first. By lunch, she'd sent an email, the medium people use when they want the performance to look intelligent. She said she'd felt lonely, that the separate rooms had made everything worse, that something happened but it didn't mean anything, a sentence that needs no edits because it edits itself. She said she wanted to talk, really talk, like that hadn't been a currency in our house for a while. I replied hours later to say we would speak about logistics when I'd had rest. Not a negotiation. Not a door. A sentence planted like a stake so I could tie my horse to it while the wind decided if it wanted to keep making me lean. The next day, I called a moving company that only asks 3 questions: stairs, dates, and what floor. I rented a small place month to month with a balcony big enough for a chair and a plant. I brought my toolbox and hung 2 shelves badly and rehung them well. I bought a bed that didn't have history in its slats. I didn't fill every corner. I let some corners be edges. A room needs a border to know what it is. People ask the thing they always ask, are you okay? I said what you say when the truth is too complicated to hand to someone else. I will be. Eric hugged me in the careful way friends do when they aren't trying to fix anything with their arms. My mother texted a heart and then called to ask if I was eating. I sent a photo of chili. She said that didn't count and sent a recipe for soup. Lauren and I met once by the window of a coffee shop where the staff knows when to glide away. She looked small and strong at the same time, like someone who had been telling herself a story long enough to believe it and now had to pronounce new words. She cried and said the names and times and truths in an order designed to make it look like a mistake, and maybe in a way that's the worst part. It was a mistake shaped like a series of choices. I didn't ask for details that turn into weapons in your own mind later. I paid for our coffees, left the receipt on the table like a flag that meant we were civil here, and walked her to her car without touching her elbow. We kept our promise to be kind, if not married. I signed the papers a month later in an office that smelled like pen caps. The clerk slid the documents across the desk like she was tired of being the finish line for stories that all sounded the same if you didn't know the parts that were different. I wrote my name where it asked for it. There are moments when the power goes out and tells the truth. There are others when fluorescent lights do the job. I don't hate Lauren. That would make the story simpler than it deserves. Hate is fireworks. It burns the hand that lights it. I will not be loud and gone. I will be steady in here. I will buy a plant and water it on Wednesdays. I will sand the rough edge of a shelf because my hand caught on it once, and I want the next man who lives here, whoever he is, to run his hand along it and not bleed. Sometimes, on a night when the air remembers how to be wet and electric, I hear the echo of that storm, the quiet it made after it took what it came for. I turn off the fan and listen to the room be a room. No machine. No app. No dot on a screen pretending to be a person. Just breath. Mine. Separate bedrooms didn't save us. They revealed us. The rules were not a cure. They were a corridor. At the end of it, there was a door I wouldn't put my ear against, and beyond it a choice I didn't make for her. What I made was another choice, one I can live with without a graph to prove it. I don't need fireworks to mark the moment I left. I had a flashlight and a note and a comm I didn't know I owned. The power went out. The noise died. And in that honest dark, I finally heard the only thing I needed to.